Most beginner modders think i3d files are scary, fragile and untouchable. But once you understand what's really inside them, they suddenly become very boring. And that's actually a good thing. Hey, virtual landscape architect, ready to demystify i3d files today? I guarantee you won't be afraid of i3d files anymore if you follow along in this video. So, what's an i3d file? An i3d file is a giant-specific format used for maps, objects and scenes. The i3d file itself mostly contains structural references, material information and placement. Most i3d files are accompanied by an i3d shapes file. The shapes file contains the actual 3D mesh data. Important, an i3d file is just a text file. More precisely, it's an XML file. What is XML? XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. It's a structured format computers are very good at reading. Similar idea to HTML, but XML is used for data and not for websites. The good thing is we will never have to write any i3d files from scratch. We are perfectly fine if we can recognize patterns, read it confidently and maybe do some simple edits. Let's create a new empty i3d file in the Giants editor now. Let's start up the Giants editor and just use the untitled i3d file, which it opens automatically because this will give us a clean, minimal starting point. Let's add a simple cube to the scene. So we go to Create, Primitives, Cube. Then let's move the cube a bit so it's not at the origin, and also rotate it slightly so that we can see our rotation result in the XML later. And let's assign a material to the cube. Here on the right side you can select Diffuse Map, click on the 3 dots, and then in the window which opens again on the 3 dots. And so now navigate to the installation directory of Farming Simulator, and there under Data, Maps, Textures, Shared. And there we have a bricks, generic, diffuse, normal and specular. So for the diffuse map we of course choose diffuse. Edit, OK. And then we do the same with the gloss map, which is the specular. Open it, 3 dots, specular. And also the normal map. Let's see what we got. It's a bit dark, so let's also add a light to the scene. Go to Create, Light. Now we can see our result better. Let's save the file somewhere. Where you save it doesn't matter, so you just need to find it back. Everything we did visually in the i3d file now is saved as text. Let's now open it with the text editor. If you have set up the text editor in your preferences, you can simply push this button, Open i3d in text editor. And for me it will open the i3d file in Notepad++. Any editor will work, but Notepad++ or VS Code or some other advanced editor is better. We will see in a minute why. This is now the XML code which was generated. It looks intimidating, but it's actually easy. The basic concept of XML is that it uses tags inside angle brackets. So for example here, a tag describes what kind of data it is. So here we are looking at the files tag. And then an opening and a closing tag form one logical unit. You see here, this is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. The closing tag has an extra slash in it. The actual value or more values live between the tags. It would be this in this case. And now we also see the advantage of a slightly advanced editor, because when I click on a tag it will also highlight the other one, so I can immediately see which ones belong together. That makes it much easier to get an overview about the file. Windows Notepad will not do this. You can still open the i3d files in Windows Notepad, it will just be a bit more cumbersome to edit. Also, most slightly advanced editors will allow you to collapse the files. So see the small minuses here at the side, you can collapse each part. And that also gives you a better overview. So then we can immediately see that this file has a few main parts, and we will go into these in a moment. As we saw already here in the Files section, tags can be also nested inside other tags, because here under the Files tag we have another tag which is named File and not Files. That creates a clear hierarchy and structure in the file. And then a tag can also contain an attribute inside the opening tag. So here for the file tag, for example, you see that the closing angle bracket is back here. And after the file name, so after the tag name, which is file, we see here that we have file ID, file name, and these are called attributes. Attributes describe details like name, position, or whatever you might think of. And some tags also don't have a closing tag, just as this one. These are called self-closing tags. It does not have like a /file ending tag, but it does have /closing angle bracket. This is self-closing and doesn't need a separate ending tag. Let's now have a closer look at the structure of the file. At the very top, we have the XML header. This tells programs how to interpret the file. We will never have to touch this. Then we have the overall i3d tag. If I collapse this, you see I collapse the whole file. Then next we have a file section, or we have the asset section, but that's just about the export program. I will skip this. Then we have the file section, and the file section defines external resources which are used inside the i3d file. You see here that we find back the files which we referenced for the material. So here it says data, maps, textures, shared, bricks, generic, diffuse, normal, and specular. Please note that it does not have the full file name in it, but instead it uses $data. $data is a placeholder which is used in the Giants editor to reference the program directory data folder. So that way you don't have to specify everything until the program directory, because it will do that automatically. You only have to specify the file from there if you use the data shortcut. And then each file also has an ID, which you see here, file ID 123. Let's now look at the materials. Materials define how things look. So they are about colors, textures, shaders, and other parameters. The material here is the one which we created. So you see it has one material, and the material has some attributes like name and material ID, and it also has some other XML tags inside it, which is texture, normal map, and gloss map. And for the texture, you see here that it references file ID 1. And if we look back at file ID 1 over here, we see that it is the file name, so the diffuse texture which we selected. Same for the normal map and the gloss map. Then we have this shapes section. We have this only because the shapes we created are very basic. Normally you would not see that in the i3d file, but in the separate shapes file. But if for these basic shapes, it will not create a separate shapes file. But let's close this because normally we won't use this. And then we have the scene section. The scene section defines what exists in the world, where it's located, and what settings it has. This is basically the same what you also see in the scene graph in the Giants editor. So here, let's find the cube and the light we just created. This is the complete scene, and then the first one is a self-closing one, you see that here, and its name is cube, and it has a translation of this, rotation of this, shape ID number is 1, and it has a few other settings. And the next thing is light, so this is the light which we created. Now we'll just do something which you're technically not supposed to do, but it works perfectly fine. Select the XML block of the cube object. Make sure to copy the whole thing, including the opening and end tag. Like this. Copy, Ctrl+C. Then after the end tag, create a new line and paste what you just copied. And now we have two shapes here. If your indentation is a bit off, it doesn't matter. It is still correct XML, but you can adjust it for better readability. That's best practice. So for example, if it looks like this for you, it will still work, but you can also move it to be under the other one. Let's change the name so we can recognize it later. I name it Cube 2. And then let's adjust the translation so it moves to a new position. And here we have 3 values. It has -2.8, then a space, 0, and then 2.06. If we want to move it, we just put, for example, 0 over here, or whatever you like. So we have 3 values in here, separated by a space. And we can also change the rotation. Ours, which we created, is now 13 degrees. Let's change that to 45 maybe. If you don't see the rotation in your XML, it's probably because you didn't rotate your cube originally. In that case, you can simply write rotation equals and this manually, or you go back to the Giants editor and rotate it to get the values in your XML. If you don't have it, that's often the case with i3d, then it's using the default settings, which is in this case 000. And now let's save the text file. I minimize this, and now I go back to the Giants editor, and if you have it still open, like me, you can use this reload button next to the open as text file to reload the i3d file based on the text file. Then it asks you, are you sure? Yes, I am. And look what we did. We have now a second cube, which is sitting at the origin because we put translation 000, but it is rotated by 45 degrees. So this was a change in the i3d file. You see, i3d files are not magic. They are a structured representation of your scene. You don't need to edit them every day, but understanding them removes a lot of fear. And that's a huge step forward as a modder. But how does this all help me in my modding journey, you ask? For example, not all the settings are available in the graphic interface of the Giants editor. Some very specific things cannot be done visually, but only in the i3d file. Water surfaces, for example. There are a few settings which you need to make that's not available in the graphic interface. Or if you want to add a new foliage to your map. And then it's good to know how to find the things you're looking for and do all these small adjustments in the file, like copy pasting, small edits and such. The next video will be about procedural placement, and there we will use this knowledge. If you want to be prepared for the procedural placement video, you should also watch the terrain editing video if you haven't yet. i3d and terrain editing are the preconditions for procedural placement. Hey, thank you for sticking with me until the end. I know theory can be a bit boring and hard, but we still need it if we want to make real progress. If you learned something today, don't forget to like the video, subscribe and hit all those nice little buttons below. That would help my channel grow, but it will also help you not to miss any of my future content. Win-win, right? Thanks a ton. Also, if you have any further questions or feedback, or you have wishes for future videos, please leave them in the comments below and I will make sure to respond to it. See you next time. Bye!